Hi, my name is Kyle, and when I started working from home full-time at the beginning of the year with the COVID-19 quarantine, I very quickly got sick of having a headset on for most of the day as I was in and out of meetings. It started being painful to wear, and I thought there must be a better way. So I went out and I bought a microphone, and I started using that microphone along with my speakers, and I was really happy to be rid of the headset. But I didn't stop there. I kept finding new things that I could do to improve my meeting experience, and I started getting a lot of questions about my setup. So I decided to make this video. Hopefully you find it interesting. I'll take you through my setup, answer some of the common questions, and maybe you'll find something here that you want to add to your own work from home setup to improve your meeting experience too. A few housekeeping things I'll get out of the way first. I am a Microsoft employee. But I'm making this just for my own personal time. And so the views that I express here may not actually represent the views of my employer, and we'll make sure to keep those things separate. However, I am a Microsoft enthusiast. I have been all my life. And so a lot of the things I'm showing here are designed for Microsoft platform and Microsoft software. But there are things that I'm going to show here that would work with any video conferencing software. I just happen to think that Teams is the best one. I'm doing this all in one take as if you're in a meeting with me, so I apologize in advance if I make a mistake or if I have to go back and talk about something that I forgot. Last, take a look in the description. I'm going to put links there, and I'm going to put all the information of the things that I talk about here for the hardware and software. So if you do see something you like, you should find a link there to at least get you to an example of what I'm using. So you too can add it to your work from home setup. Okay, so what we're going to go over today is three big categories. First, we're going to talk about video and the hardware and software I use for video. Then we're going to jump into audio. And then I've created this kind of big bucket for everything else that I call meeting experience. And that's just things that I've done to make it more enjoyable for me when I'm in a meeting. And I hope to make it more enjoyable to the people who are in the meetings with me. Okay, let's take a look and start with video. So you can see here I've got two cameras set up. The first is a Sony a6000, and that's a mirrorless camera. And that is actually connected to my PC using a HDMI capture card. And I'll put the link for that in the description, as well as I'll put a USB version of that also if you're using, for example, something like a laptop where you couldn't add an expansion card. The other camera that I'm using is this Brio over here. This is a 4K webcam made by Logitech. And one of the questions I get a lot from people is, why do you have two cameras? Well, you may have seen it there when I turned to look at the Brio, but I have a multiple monitor setup here, and I use these two monitors to the right as my primary monitors when I'm in a meeting. And so I'll typically, in the middle monitor, I'll put the Teams meeting itself. And when I'm talking to people, I like to have a camera that looks like I'm looking at them to kind of create a little bit of that human connection. But when I was sharing a PowerPoint deck, I like to keep that up so I can still see the people in the meeting. And I would put the PowerPoint presentation over here on this monitor. But as you can see, it ended up then being a great view of my ear for everybody who was joined into the meeting. And so I added the Brio camera so that I could be looking in the general direction of a camera when I was talking to slides or other things that I was sharing over here. And then when I went back to talk to the meeting, I could switch back to this Sony camera, which I use as my primary camera. Now, one of the things that you'll see here is I'm switching between them kind of smoothly and effortlessly. And Teams isn't great at switching between cameras. Their switch camera functionality is really intended for finding the right camera, or maybe you want to switch it once or twice in a meeting to maybe hold up a phone or a laptop or something that has a camera facing the other way to show something. It's not meant for this kind of smooth switching back and forth during a meeting. And so what I use instead is software called XSplit Broadcaster. And you can see that software here And essentially what that does is it installs a virtual webcam. So to Teams, it looks like just another webcam, and the video feed that Teams gets when I set that as my webcam in Teams is whatever is being broadcast by XSplit Broadcaster. And so my two webcams feed into XSplit Broadcaster, and I use that to switch back and forth, and I can do transitions and other interesting things. Now, I'm actually recording this walkthrough on software called StreamLabs OBS. I understand they're working on virtual webcam capability for StreamLabs OBS. If they do release that, I'll put that into the description as well. I would much prefer to be using StreamLabs. I'm more familiar with it, and I think it's more flexible. So it would be awesome if they did have that. If somebody from StreamLabs is watching, please hurry and get virtual webcam support in StreamLabs. But for now, XSplit Broadcaster actually works quite well, and I think is a good option in the meantime. So the last thing in the video experience that I'll show, you may have noticed the two light panels that I have here. So why do I have light panels? Well, I found in Ireland, especially at the very beginning of the quarantine, the sun was going down very early, and so my evening time meetings, the light would get really, really bad, which meant the video quality was getting bad. And I have one light bulb in my office. It's behind my head, so I would start to get this kind of poor looking, you know, almost witness protection style silhouette. And so I added these two light panels, and it's actually done a couple things. It's not only given me kind of great light from the front, so I don't have that silhouette, but it's also allowed me to really control a consistent white balance. And so I've set up my cameras based on that specific white balance, and I get consistent video no matter what time of the day it is. Okay, let's take a quick look now at audio. So I mentioned in the beginning this microphone that I'm using here. It's not actually a very expensive microphone. It's a studio style mic. You can see that I have it on an arm here, and that makes it really easy to move around as I move around during a meeting. But then from a software perspective, I use software called Voicemeeter, and this has given me a lot more control over the audio in my Teams meeting. So I actually pipe in the first input here is the feed from this microphone. And one of the things that caused me to seek out this software in the first place is the ability to set a gate. And this is actually a decibel threshold over which the audio will pass through and under which it will actually not pass through audio. And by setting this gate, it's cleaned up my audio a lot. I have a busy street outside the window of my office here, and so while I usually stay muted when I'm not actually talking, still, if I was pausing to let somebody else speak before I continued to speak and a bus went by, that would pick up on the microphone, and nobody wants to hear that in their ear when they're in the middle of a meeting. And so this gate has made it so that if I'm close to the microphone, it picks me up while I'm talking, but even if I get a little bit away, it starts to drop off. But if I come closer to the microphone, now you can hear me again. And that has made a big difference in the ability for me to no longer have that sound of even if I had the window open, people walking by on the street and, you know, speaking loudly. That doesn't really happen for me anymore in a meeting, which has been fantastic. Now, there's a couple other things I do with Voicemeeter. First is it allows me to control what is coming out of my speakers. And so the A1 output here is coming to my speakers. And so the speaker output in Teams goes into this first virtual input, and that allows me to control independently the volume coming out from Teams into my speakers. But then I have a second virtual input that I have put other audio into. Like, for example, I have a Groove playlist of meeting music, and I'll talk a little bit more about how I use that, but that allows me to actually put that through into Teams as if it's coming from my microphone. And so the microphone input in Teams is actually set to the output from Voicemeeter, or this B1 output. And we'll see in the meeting experience section a little bit more about how I use that. Okay, that's everything for audio. Now let's take a look at that meeting experience. And this is where I think I've had maybe the most fun as I've been refining the meeting experience for me. So the first thing I'll show is you can kind of see here the arm from the microphone blocks it a little bit, but I've got a device here called a Stream Deck. And this is a bunch of buttons with little LCD screens behind them. And what that allows me to do is it allows me to set actions to those buttons. So you can see here, this is the software that powers that Stream Deck. And I have a bunch of different common actions that I use during a meeting that I can then actuate by just pressing that button. So you can see a bunch of StreamLabs actions in the lower left here. Those usually aren't there. I have other actions there, but I'm using it now to also create this video, so I've created those in there. But in the lower right, I have those controls for camera that I use for XSplit. And I've got a bunch of other things here, and I'll just take you through those really quickly. So you can see the emotes kind of in that second row from the bottom on the right. And what I found in a meeting, oftentimes we'd end up in this situation where somebody would say, you know, oh, this is the plan, you know, does everybody agree, or what do you all think about that? And it's always this really awkward situation where it's like, am I the one that should unmute and speak for the room? Do we all need to unmute and speak for the room? And so this has given me a really easy way to just press one button, and in my video, it'll give the thumbs up, or, yep, you know, I love that idea, or, you know, even, oh, that's pretty funny. And just giving me a really quick way to give some feedback without having to unmute and add my voice to everybody else in the meeting. And also, I have that kind of second row down there, a bunch of actions for Teams and PowerPoint. And for these are actually just actuating hotkeys to do things like go forward in a PowerPoint deck, or go back, or answer a call, answer it with video, you know, hang up. But one of the interesting things about these are, you know, I was finding that if I was in another application, like say I was in the Teams application and now I wanted to forward my PowerPoint, I needed to then click on the PowerPoint because those actions are not global hotkeys. And so I use software called Auto Hotkey, or AHK, to map global hotkeys to then when I press these buttons, those global hotkeys trigger a script in Auto Hotkey, and it switches to that app, does the hotkey to do the action I want, and then switches back to whatever app I was in. And I'll put a link to how to do that in the description as well. So it makes it just really easy. I can run most of my meeting just from this panel here. Now, in the far upper right, those four buttons are all to control lighting, and they're all actually controlling Philips Hue scenes. And so the one that is white, that is actually controlling a smart plug, Philips Hue smart plug. And both of my studio lights are plugged into that. And so by pressing that button, I can turn my studio lights on or off. And it allows me to turn it on right before a meeting and then turn it off so they're not always on me when I'm not in a meeting. The green, orange, and red buttons are also controlling Philips Hue scenes, but they're actually controlling lights that are right outside my office. And so I have 2 kids, and one of the great things about working from home is I can spend more time with them. One of the not so great things is sometimes hard to create boundaries between my work life and my home life. And so what I've done is I've talked to them about what it means when you see different colors in the lights outside my office. So for example, I can turn it to green when I'm free. You know, my door is metaphorically open, even if it's not physically open. They can come in, talk to me about their day, give me big hugs, you know, and spend some of that quality time with their papa. But if I'm really focused, I turn it to orange, and they know that means they don't need to be quiet. They can go about their day, run around, play, whatever they want to do, but please leave the door closed as I really need to be focused into work. Now, if I'm in a call or something where I need them to actually pay attention to the volume of their playing, I can turn it into red or busy. And when it is in this state, they know, you know, Papa's in a call, maybe play downstairs, maybe not scream at the top of your lungs if you're getting a little bit rambunctious in your play. I do have the audio gate on the microphone, but it can be overcome by a very active child. And so this has just given them a really clear guideline as to how they can act and maintain that boundary between home and work life. And it's worked really well, even with my young kids, because they understand the 3 different colors and what they mean. Now, if I'll show you there one more thing on the desktop here. So if before I had the Stream Deck, I used this app called Hutro for Hue, and it allowed me just to pin right on my taskbar those 3 scenes as well. So I could just right click on it and go to that quick action and trigger one of those scenes. And so you don't need the Stream Deck to do this. The Stream Deck has just kind of centralized all of those actions into one place. So something else that I have done as part of my meeting experience, and we talked about this earlier, is I've started to use music. And when I started this video, you got a glimpse of that. But what I actually do is in PowerPoint, I created this looping GIF or this animation. And I play this, or I share this at the beginning of a meeting. It just says the meeting will begin shortly. This one is for the team I'm on, a little bit of a plug for the Microsoft Editor product, helping proof your language in Microsoft applications and in the browser. But this just gives people that indication that, hey, they're in the meeting, we're maybe waiting for people to join. And then what I'll do is I'll actually play music during that time as well. So I've got a bunch of kind of non-offensive corporate style music, usually a pretty upbeat music, to just play. And what that does is I found it reduces that kind of awkward silence and gives people permission to be working in email while we wait for that last person to join. And this is something that, I started doing for meetings that I was running. And I found now when people see me in a meeting and we're in that awkward silence phase, more often than not, they'll ask me, hey, can you turn on that music to play? It's one of the things that people have really, really enjoyed a lot since I started doing it. Okay, the last couple things I'll show here is along with that audio, and I have a button to kind of fade it in and fade it out. There's a few other audio controls I've done on the Stream Deck. So I have my microphone mute, which actually mutes it in Voice Meter. And I won't do that or you won't hear me. But I also have a couple of additional sound effects, and I'll show you one of them here. So one of the things that we found was missing was when we celebrated a success in a meeting, we used to, if we were in person, maybe we'd go around and we'd clap, but on a Teams meeting, it's kind of awkward to unmute and clap into your microphone. And so one of the sound effects that I like to do is actually the clapping or the applause sound effect. And in doing the applause sound effect, it kind of gives that brief moment of, hey, we're all celebrating this, and then we can move on. And I've got a few other sound effects that all uses the ability of Voice Meter to play a sound file. And so you can see that it's the tape deck in the upper right here, and these buttons just switch the file that's being played and then just play it once. So that is the end. That's all of the updates that I've done. I mentioned before, you don't need to get every single one of these things to improve your meeting experience. A lot of the hotkeys can also be mapped using auto hotkey to keyboard or mouse. So I've got a gaming mouse, gaming keyboard. So there's a bunch of buttons everywhere. So before I had the Stream Deck, I just mapped those. So don't feel like you have to do everything to improve your meeting experience. Pick one or two things if you like them and give them a try. I found it's really improved my quality of my work from home experience, and a lot of people I meet with ask about it, and it seems to improve the quality of their experience meeting with me as well. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you found something useful, and I hope you have great meetings now and into the future. And good luck. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.